Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Basketball Podcast of Mid-America. I'm your host, Anthony Christensen, joined by the beautiful Ethan Westerman of Whole Hog Sports, the legendary Bob Holt of the Democrat Gazette, and the stupendous Blake Sutton behind the scenes. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you guys for being here. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'm thriving at the same time as not because it's been some warm weather here in Northwest Arkansas, which has got me outside feeling good. I love the sunshine, but simultaneously, allergies are kicking in. So if you're watching the video element of this podcast, do not judge that my eyes are going to be squinted the entire time. They're really, really itchy right now, but I'm still probably going to go outside because I think sunshine cures the soul about as much as, a win does for the Arkansas basketball team.
It's fair. Bob, how are you?
I'm fine.
Any big time nights on Dixon Street lately for you, or?
I tell people all the time, the only thing I do on Dixon Street is go to Collier's to get my medications. At my age, I don't stay out late on Dixon Street.
Blake, how you doing?
Hey, I can't complain.
There we go. And now, without further ado, let's get into the hoops. It was decent. Eric Musselman said the past two games were the best 80 minutes of basketball that the Arkansas men's basketball team has played. Narrow loss to Mississippi State, and then a win over Texas A&M, which very much probably hurts the Aggies' NCAA tournament bubble. And then now you got the academic power of the SEC, Missouri coming up along with Vanderbilt. And I don't want to say things are maybe turning around because, it's just kind of how the season has gone, isn't it? But there seems to be a real chance to kind of build some momentum. So, yeah, just kind of looking at it from that perspective. Bob, looking at these past two games, what do you kind of think has made them, so much different than what we've seen most of the season?
Well, Mekhi Mitchell, who had played, he's really played pretty well since the Kentucky game. Didn't do much against Tennessee. I don't think he only played 11-something minutes, but Mekhi Mitchell has really come alive. He's not just playing well, he's playing awesome. Career high scoring back-to-back games, 21 at Mississippi State and then 22 at A&M, and he's scoring inside. He's knocking down his free throws like he's Larry Bird or something, blocking shots, just doing really everything. And, Caleb Battles has gotten back in the fight. I wasn't sure what his role would be. He didn't play at all in the first A&M game and was playing limited minutes. And then injuries, I think, kind of forced Eric Musselman's hands somewhat. And apparently Battle, kept working hard in practice. And so he got a chance. Mississippi State played really well, 18 points, had 15 the other night. Didn't shoot very well, 3 of 15, but he knocked down 9 of 10 free throws. If you look at the box, he had assists and steals and rebounds, just doing a lot of stuff, was going hard to the basket. It wasn't like he jacked up a bunch of threes. He was taking the ball hard. Probably should have gotten a few more free throws in my mind. So he's been playing better. Tremont Mark playing through a shoulder injury that Eric Musselman says has been bothering him for a while. And Jeremiah Davenport's a guy I think has really played well, really rebounded, gone in there and given him a lot of energy. So he's had to shrink the rotation really by necessity because of injuries to Jalen Graham and Keon Menefield, of course, Trevor Brazil. I don't necessarily expect him to be back all year, but, I think he's shrunk the rotation, which he likes to do, and he's getting guys out there that have bought in and playing hard. And Eric mentioned this the other day that, the team's just gotten better. Maybe it's taken them this long to figure some things out, and I'm not saying people should get their Final Four tickets or anything like that, but it is encouraging. And then the next two teams they have coming up are below them in the standings. They got them at home, so on paper, those are games they should win. We know it doesn't work that way in college basketball, but there is a chance here for Arkansas to get on a bit of a roll, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of stay on the topic of Mekhi Mitchell. I wrote a story yesterday kind of breaking down his recent performances over the past 7 days, just kind of looking at how he's kind of stepped into such an important role for this team, especially with Trevor Brazil and now Jalen Graham both out. Ethan, I just kind of want to ask you, what has his emergence kind of been like for you to see, and how impressive has it been?
Yeah, I think he was just kind of at the beginning of the year, probably for fans, he was frustrating. He was there was a lot of things that he just was like little things he wasn't finishing at the rim a lot of the time. Sometimes, he was struggling to even get on the court because of it. It just didn't look like it was the same old him. He had some great moments last year. Like I think back to some games they played Kentucky, and I feel like he played Sheboy really well last year, and it just brought a lot of intensity. Then he had some just really good moments last year. He was a crucial part to that Sweet 16 team. I think it was just frustrating maybe for people at the beginning of the year watching him. I think that there was some sort of like lingering injury, I think. I'm not sure the exact specific. Do you remember, Bob?
Well, he had a broken foot over this summer, and so I think that affected him some. Maybe getting off to a slow start, and
Yeah.
he was kind of in and out of the lineup. Last year he started and played about 20, 21 minutes a game. This year he was coming off the bench. Sometimes he was playing a lot, sometimes he wasn't playing much.
Yeah.
And but yes, he's got it going now for sure.
Yeah. I think you got to think that broken foot might have contributed to the slow start to the year, but I mean, he's picked it up like recently, and I mean, this is something he's doing, and I think it's something that the team collectively is doing. Is they're starting to defend better, and their defense, I think, directly translates to how they're doing on the offensive end too, as far as just like they're coming up with like some tough stops, getting out in transition, scoring that way. But yeah, his emergence has been crucial for the team. I mean, I think still have like, against Tennessee, I'm pretty sure he was just super quiet game for him. But I mean, aside from that, he's strung together some really, really good performances. Like, how many of his past 7 games, not to put you on the spot too much with this, Anthony, have been double doubles?
I believe it's 2, but he's been in double digits in all of them for scoring, with the exception of the Tennessee game.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, and I'm sure that some of those that he wasn't a double double, like he was probably pretty close with his rebounds though. So he's playing really well. Like Bob kind of alluded to, I think that shrinking the rotation might just be kind of what I've top to bottom liking seeing some of these guys just get some more run. I know against who they play Texas A&M earlier this week that he had a great first half and then came off the bench in the second half, which I mean, we're all just kind of like, oh, what's happening? Like, why is he coming off the bench? But I mean, it was clear it didn't last long. He got in pretty quick, and then he got a lot of run. I just like seeing these guys be able to get in a little bit of a groove and rhythm. I like seeing L. Ellis, who's had plenty of mistakes this year, be able to like play through some mistakes. We've seen that. So, yeah, Mekhi Mitchell with what he's doing, I think, has just elevated the play of the whole team.
And then looking at Tremont Mark, his second half against A&M, Eric Musselman said he kind of shifted some things and made him the primary ball handler of the second half. And, I mean, to say that worked would be an understatement. He scored 22 of his 26 points against A&M in the second half. Bob, you asked him a bit about that post-game. Can you just talk about what kind of made that so impressive and how would you kind of, I guess, rate that kind of a shift, if that makes sense?
Well, yeah, he's obviously an Aggie killer, first of all. He was having a good year. He averages 17 points on the season. That's great. He averages over 30. Now, it's small sample size, 2 games, but, you would have – Arkansas obviously devised a good game plan for Wade Taylor, who scored 41. They held him to 11. I know Buzz Williams is a good coach, and the Aggies, they're a very physical team. They play good defense. And how they let Mark score 26 on him, it was pretty clear that he's out there dribbling and breaking guys down. And, to me, hey, double team him, get the ball out of their hands, do something to shake it up. But, yeah, it was impressive because he's wearing those, I guess they call them kinesiology tape or medical tape or whatever. And it's elastic, and they're sort of bands, so they move with your body. But it's, for pain and inflammation and swelling and he was wearing that already, and then he dove on. I think he dove on the court. I know he hit the court for a loose ball, and you could tell he was in a lot of pain. He went to the locker room. He said after the game that Matt Townsend did some stuff. The trainer, I guess he stretched some things. I don't know what he did, but he came back late that half, and they just had an awesome second half. But Eric Musselman talked about he's been playing with that pain for a while, and you got to admire a guy because the team's struggling, and but he's out there playing and playing at a high level. And, the dagger in the first A&M game, was when he hit the shot with 1.1 seconds left, obviously kind of a running jumper. And then really the dagger this time was A&M had closed within 3, and they had a shot to tie. Wade Taylor scored, and then he missed a free throw that would have complete the 3-point play, and A&M got the rebound. And I think it was
it was Radford.
Radford. Tyrese Radford had a pretty good look at a 3 and missed it. And then Arkansas went down, and Solomon Washington fouled Mark, who hit a 3, and then he hit the free throw. He got a 4-point play. So it goes from A&M having a shot to tie it to now Arkansas's back out to 7. That was about a little over 2 minutes left, I think. That was a huge play, a huge momentum swing. And, Tremont he was tremendous. He was tremendous, if that's a word. I should have wrote
It
that.
now is.
Yeah, maybe I could save that for later if he has another big game. But, he really carried him offensively. And, Mackay was doing pick and rolls and knocking down free throws. And it was just a really good win for Arkansas because A&M's, they beat Tennessee there. At home, they beat Florida. They beat Kentucky. They've got I think 6 quad one wins. They've had some really good wins. They've had some head-scratching losses, like getting swept by Arkansas and losing at Vanderbilt. Although, Vanderbilt can be a tough place to play, as can Arkansas. But that was just a really good win. A&M's been a tough place for Arkansas to win. I think they were 2-7 in SEC games. It was a tough place for Mike Anderson when he coached at Missouri in the Big 12, and then in the SEC. And none of Eric's teams had won there. So that was a really big win for Arkansas.
Yeah, and I want to look ahead a little bit just because we're going to have some listener questions in the next part of the show. But kind of looking ahead, Arkansas has 2 winnable games coming up, as we mentioned, playing against academic power Missouri and Vanderbilt coming up. Ethan, if you're an Arkansas fan, can you just talk about what do you want to see from these games? Is it more of the same? What are you kind of, looking for with these?
I think you have to just be really encouraged by the past 2 games. I know they lost at Mississippi State, but the effort was tremendous in that game for them, or we can say tremendous if we're now only going to say that. But something flipped like midway through the first half of that game because Mississippi State was bullying them inside for like the first 10 minutes. They were just getting in the paint and scoring it. Well, I think they still probably outscored Arkansas in the paint by a lot because of how big of a start they had in the paint. But something changed in the middle of the first half where Arkansas just started defending better. I think something clicked then, and they've just kept it going all the way through the A&M game too. Just this defensive intensity. I think that's what fans want to see is can this team just for once maybe handle – it's strange because you get these games against Missouri and Vandy, and you actually for once feel like in this conference season Arkansas should handle business. When have we been able to say that? Even whenever they went on the road at Mizzou, I kind of felt like in the moment it was a little bit of a toss-up, especially it being a road game. Now with these teams going to be in Fayetteville, I think that it's really just can you handle business? Can you come out and play that hard at home and maybe get a comfortable win? I think that would be what the fans are looking for. And then just game within the game, I guess it's probably can you stop Tamar Bates, or at least limit him again. That he's good. Missouri actually just played they played Tennessee pretty tough too, so maybe they have a little bit of momentum too. So I think the first 10 minutes of that game, maybe even shorter than that, I think will really set the tone.
Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned Tamar Bates, but obviously he's probably the guy to watch for Mizzou. I mean, you got Noah Carter, some players like that, but you also have Vanderbilt coming up. Van Allen Lubin's a really good player for them as well. They've got some weapons. I guess what do you guys both think the keys to these games are going to be, from a defensive standpoint, going at those 2 guys? Bob, if you want.
Well, I think a big thing for Missouri, Arkansas has already gone to Columbia, and I guess it was 91-84. But if you watch the game, Arkansas was pretty much in control from the get-go. It's crazy. I think with 1:30 left, they were up by 14 or 15, and Mizzou had one of those meaningless 7-0 runs, kind of like what Arkansas had late at LSU and late against Oklahoma. And Arkansas really handled them, and so I think they need to be very careful not to – it sounds crazy. Okay, you're 4-9, you're 13-13. How could you be complacent? But you've already beaten Missouri pretty convincingly on the road. They still haven't won an SEC. I mean, think about Missouri. I think their last win was December 30th over Central Arkansas. I mean, that's a long – they've lost – 13 in a row, right? They're 0-13. That's not any fun. And so I assume they're hungry for a win. And we've seen in the league, LSU lost at home, or LSU went to A&M and opened the league and won, and then A&M went to LSU and won. We've seen Kentucky go to Florida and win, and Florida go to Kentucky and win. And so it's not always – we can't assume the home team's going to win. Arkansas obviously won at A&M for the first time in a while in 2019, I think. And so I think Arkansas, it's kind of a trap game for them. I think it's 11 a.m., tip-off, so hopefully the crowd may not be there and awake. So I think Arkansas needs to be ready to play and not get complacent, not take Missouri for granted. I think that's a big key. But basically just do what they did in that first game, which was just destroyed Missouri inside. Don't jack up a lot of threes, take the ball inside. Jalen Graham probably won't be back, maybe won't be back, but you can certainly pound it into Mekhi Mitchell. Chandler Lawson's a good, solid inside guy. Drive the ball, get to the free throw line. And we know from Dennis Gates' recent comments, Missouri's not doing a good job of getting to the free throw line. I'd have to look it up, but I think they take fewer free throws than anybody. And he had some interesting comments on that after the Tennessee game. And so I think just do what you did at Columbia, which is, pound the ball inside.
Yeah, quote, "We're effing terrible," Dennis Gates, about drawing fouls. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Blake's going to have another edition of Stump the Bob, and we're going to get into your guys' questions as well, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
Get the latest breaking news on all Arkansas Razorback sports at WholeHogSports.com. Our award-winning reporters and photographers go beyond game recaps to bring our subscribers the most trusted Razorbacks news anywhere. With expert analysis, the latest in recruiting, plus unique and compelling stories of your favorite teams. Subscribe today at WholeHogSports.com.
All right, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us, and now we're going to get into some listener questions. Thank you to everybody who sent us their burning Arkansas men's basketball questions. So first up, a two-parter from the message board from U-Demand and Baton Rouge Hog. First, how has Eric Musselman, I guess, kind of kept the team playing hard despite the temptations not to with the disappointing season to this point? And then, or how has he gotten them to start playing harder? For everyone,
I'll give a stab. I'll give a short stab. I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not at practices, so I don't know. But when I look at this team, I see a guy like L. Ellis, who is a part of a Louisville team, that if you think this Arkansas team is bad, they were a lot worse. He's played hard through rough stretches for a lot of his career. I think that you've seen him be fine with his role on the team. He sat on the bench a lot of games, and he's come out and played hard. I think Caleb Battle maybe took a message whenever he just wasn't getting any playing time, and now that he's getting it back, it's like maybe he's realized some areas that he was lacking in, and he's playing hard. I think you see I think it might be just a byproduct also of just the rotation shortening, that you have guys who are maybe getting a little bit more of a rhythm, and they still kind of have that ability to, I'm still out here competing in the SEC. I don't want to get embarrassed. And then, the slowly you start maybe clicking a little bit more and gaining some chemistry. I think Tremont Mark, they said on the broadcast the other night that he admitted that they ran into a lot of chemistry issues. They just weren't gelling early in the season. So maybe just as the season's gone on, they've gelled a little bit better. You can't really get more embarrassed than some times that they have this year. I guess you technically could, but they've hit some really low spots to where it's kind of like, I think maybe they're just now breathing a little bit and like, let's just go play basketball. And I think you have some guys on the team that came from programs that, if you think Arkansas right now, like that's kind of what they know. Jeremiah Davenport, for instance, he plays so hard. I've said this all year. I don't think you've ever had to question his, like, does he care or does he, like, play hard? You can question a lot of times, like, some of his defense or whatnot, but I don't think all year I've ever looked at Jeremiah Davenport on the court and said, oh, he's not, like, playing hard or trying. I just think you have guys who come from programs that, they don't look at this right now as like, why, like they wouldn't be packing the bags because they've been through this before. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Next one comes from Newton Hogg on the message board. I guess Sir Isaac Newton. Science joke, I'm sorry. How might this season impact Eric Musselman's coaching and recruiting going forward? I think, we saw it kind of going into that Georgia game, kind of playing out, formulating some new plays that kind of led to some success in that one. Me personally, I think when you look at, especially the portal recruiting, you got guys from programs like Louisville or Temple or Washington or wherever. Houston's not part of that group, obviously, but I think maybe this time around in the portal, maybe you start to look at guys from more winning programs, maybe some of those better quote unquote mid majors as well. At least that's kind of what I thought when I first saw this question. Bob, if you would like to. Yeah.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of roster turnover. I think if Arkansas was having a really good year, there'd be a lot of roster turnover. That's just the world we live in now. And I don't have the roster in front of me, but several of these guys are maxing out their eligibility. So there's going to be, 8, 9 newcomers. And I think this year they are, for recruiting now, they may look more to guys that are elite defenders. Obviously, you need to score to win games, but I wonder if this year they went a little too much for offense, and maybe they need to get back to getting more guys like Trey Wade and Audis Toney and some other guys that I would put in a pretty elite defensive category. It also helps to get guys like Stanley Mude, who I think had 1,500 points in South Dakota when he came here, and he turned into a very good defensive player, and he's playing in the NBA for the Pistons now after being a free agent. So, and it's always good to get guys from I think the best guys you can get are good players from successful mid-majors because those guys are used to winning, but they're also hungry. They want to prove they can play in the SEC or the Big Ten or wherever. And so, but I think we're going to see a lot of roster turnover. That's just inevitable. And but I think there might be more of an emphasis on defense and guys that are going to buy in. But it's tough because, you go in the portal and you're recruiting a guy for maybe a matter of weeks. And, in the old days, you recruit a JUCO or a high school guy, you might spend a couple of years on him. But another interesting thing is, barring running in the SEC tournament, I don't think we're going to see Arkansas in the NCAA tournament. But the last few years, they've had to mix, which is a good problem to have, they've had to mix, preparing for NCAA tournament games with recruiting. And Eric, I remember some of those NCAA pressers would talk about the recruiting guys that are going on recruiting visits to other places, but the good news is Arkansas is in the tournament, these other places aren't. But one byproduct of not going to the NCAA tournament, if it turns out that way, is they'll be able to get be able to focus on recruiting, which that'll help recruiting. It's not obviously what you want, and but that's something that could be one upside to this is that they'll be able to hit recruiting harder and earlier.
Yes, and that's 6 guys who are exhausting all of their eligibility at the end of this season, and then you would imagine probably some guys maybe at least testing the professional waters going into the NBA draft to get some assessments from some pro scouts and everything like that. And then almost every team at least loses 1 or 2 guys, if not more, to the portal. I think last year it was, every team, it was an average of about 4 guys entering the portal per team, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, so don't take my word for that. But yeah, that does kind of feed into our next question is, how many players from this roster are still around next year, and just kind of how do you guys, kind of expect that to, and Bobby did kind of mention it, kind of play into the whole off-season recruiting?
Well, I don't know what the over-under might be, maybe 3, something like that. The guys I would think, Layden Blocker, freshman, I think he's had a good year, had his ups and downs, but he's a Little Rock kid too. I think that matters. He's a guy I think they would want back, and I think he would want to be back. Ken Menifield's a young guy. He's been around. He's went from Flint, Michigan to, a prep school in Phoenix to then Washington to here. So I would think, he might be a little tired of moving around. I think he's got a lot of upside. He needs to add some weight and strength. Bay Fall to me is an interesting, intriguing guy because he's a McDonald's All-American, and, they brought him in. He's 6'11". You can't teach a guy to be 6'11". But he's barely played, but I think he's pretty raw because he was from Senegal and he had not played much basketball. So we're not privy to practices, so I don't know how that looks. But to me, he's an intriguing guy if they feel like, well, this guy's got a high ceiling and he just used this year to kind of get used to everything. So those would be 3 guys I would think at least that would make sense for them to want them back. Other guys, I'm not saying other guys won't be back, but those are just 3 that pop into my head.
Mm-hmm. And then, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or?
Yeah, I don't really want to I don't have a prediction because if there's anything we know, it's going to be. There's always going to be 1 or 2 surprises, I feel like. And then there's always going to be maybe some that you were like, oh, I'm surprised they're coming back. That happened at least last year. I think there are some things that are intriguing to keep an eye out on. Like, for instance, Devo Davis has another year of eligibility. Is he a Razorback next year? I just think that's a question that you have to ask. I think that you have to ask the question of some guys like Joseph Pinion, this is his sophomore year. I'm sure he might not be playing as much as he would have liked, but he's an Arkansas kid. Like Bob said, that still matters. It's in a lot of this stuff, it all boils down to what the coaching staff wants to, because they'll let guys know, like, hey, you're not. I think they're pretty honest these days as far as like letting these guys know, like, hey, you might want to go elsewhere because you probably aren't going to get to play here if you want to go get to play somewhere else. I think that there's just a lot of discussions that go on, but I think we will, if anything, that those are maybe a few things to keep an eye out on, because there are some inevitable things that are going to have to, shake out.
Yeah, and those conversations definitely do happen, and they happen a lot. When I was covering Evansville last year, they'd finished 5-27 in the coach's first year, a roster he inherited and didn't recruit. And I asked him just straight up, when you have these postseason meetings with guys, is there ever this suggestion that, hey, maybe you should, look elsewhere? And he just flat out said yes, because sometimes that's best for the player, best for the program, and best for everybody involved. And I don't want to speculate on like, okay, this kid's going to leave or this kid's going to leave, just because I've never liked that. I don't know. Or maybe they should target this guy in the portal or that guy in the portal until those people are actually in the portal. That's just my take on it. That's just always been my opinion. And Bob, you did mention Bay Fall. We do have a Bay Fall question. With Trevin Brazile and Jalen Graham out, do you think we'll see a little bit more of Bay Fall? And we did see a little bit of him against Mississippi State, if I'm not mistaken. Got in, had a couple of disruptions on some shots. Didn't really register any stats besides, I think, a traveling violation. But is that something you think we could see, or with, as we mentioned, the shrinking of the rotation, do you think that's kind of out of the picture?
I think it really depends on how the game's going. No, all due respect to Bay Fall, I don't expect him to be getting a lot of minutes in a real tight game. Mississippi State, he did come in, I believe it was late in the first half, and he had a block shot and altered a couple, and he was a guy, Eric Musselman mentioned him as saying he did really well in very, very limited minutes. And so depending on, like, let's say Mekhi Mitchell has a foul in the first half, and Arkansas is going to be on defense at the end of the possession or end of the half. Well, I could see him putting Bay Fall in for defense, getting Mekhi out there, make sure he doesn't get a cheap foul, something like that. Or maybe Mekhi or Chandler gets a second foul, and maybe you put Bay in there for a couple minutes. He definitely is a good defensive player. If you look at his stats per minute, he tends to foul too much, and I think how you practice probably reflects how much you're going to play. No, we don't see practice, but if a guy isn't playing, I think we can ascertain that he's not, lighting it up in practice. But like I say, Bay's a young guy. He's very raw. But I don't see him going in there and playing 20 minutes. But in certain situations, especially on the defensive side, I could see him maybe getting a few minutes. But it really depends on the circumstances. Obviously, if they're winning big, that's a good chance to get him in. He's gotten in some blowout losses too. But he's a guy that certainly I think he's got a good ceiling because he's just so raw. But you see the physical traits there, the size and the ability to protect the rim, and I don't think he's a bad shooter either. I don't think he's going to go out there and take a three, but I do think he has a lot of upside.
Mm-hmm. And kind of staying in line with forward play and everything like that. Obviously, Trevin Brazile, Jalen Graham, both out the past few games, or in Brazile's case, the past 7 games. Graham, I think it was 2. If I'm not mistaken. With Arkansas basically being forced to play 4 guards at this moment, do you guys think that they should try to increase the tempo and play faster? How do you guys think they should approach that, if you want to take it, Ethan?
Yes. I think that we saw that against Mississippi State some, that it was really a chess match of Mississippi State they're pretty good inside, and Arkansas was pretty just fast. I feel like if Arkansas, I think that this all starts on defense. Can you create steals and turnovers and get out in transition? And whenever you have 4 guards that are getting out in transition, it can be hard to stop. I think we saw I don't even know how many 3-point plays Arkansas had against Texas A&M. There was a lot. We had the 4-point play too. I don't know how many came in the half court, how many came in transition, but I know at least a few came in transition. And I think that's what Arkansas can do, is if they can pick up this intensity on defense and get more steals and force transition opportunities, that's whenever you have some guys who can finish at the rim. Tremont Mark is really crafty at the rim. I think L. Ellis is too, for sure. Caleb Battle, he is. I just think that you have to maybe right now play to that strength, that you have some fast guys who can probably, at least get downhill faster than you did whenever you were, with the old lineup. So, yeah, I definitely think you do. The question was to have to play faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I just think that's I don't think Musselman's teams have ever been like told to be slow though. He likes to get out in transition. He likes it to be fast. So I think if anything, it's just like, hey, you got some guys out here who can really do it right now.
Well, especially if you're not running, you're always going against a set defense, and there's some pretty good, coaches in this league that'll put together good defensive game plans. So obviously, if you're getting fast breaks, you're getting 2-on-1s or 3-on-1s or whatever the case might be, I think that's a good thing. And then if they can get the lead, Eric's known for milking the clock some. He'll go back. I think this was their Sweet 16 year at Nevada in 2018. They were down to Cincinnati in the NCAA tournament by 20-something. They came back and won the game, and Eric will tell you the way that happened. Obviously, Nevada played better, but also Cincinnati didn't slow it down. And I know Eric's got his assistants calculate this thing. Here's how much time's left. Here's how many possessions there should be if we don't turn the ball over. And so you're going to see them, if they get a good lead, take the air out of the ball. But they probably the best way to get that big lead is to turn up the pace.
Yeah, calculating the amount of possessions left. There's a lot of math in basketball, and I got into sports writing to avoid math, but as we learned yesterday, can't do that with the story I wrote about Mekhi Mitchell. And I do think you can use that kind of pace of play to kind of spread defenses out and get the ball inside to Mekhi Mitchell, which I think if you get him an increased shooting volume, especially with how well he's played in the last 7 games, 6 of 7, I should say, exception of Tennessee, you can get him to really fill it up. He's shooting 60% from the field in the last 7 games. That's, I believe, it's second best of the players I compared him to in that story. But yeah, you could get him inside. Obviously, he's a decent passer as well, so he can kick it back out too. And there's a lot of benefits to playing at a good pace. This one kind of feels like a more. I keep hitting that. Athletics as a whole, but this one is asking about NIL and how Arkansas maybe compares to other big programs in those terms. Given I've just come here, I really don't know. I'm not afraid to admit that, and I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you guys know.
I don't know exact numbers. I would love it if we could FOI everybody's NIL and see who's raised the most money. I do know Arkansas's got what's it called, the Edge.
Yeah.
And they've they're really pushing. I mean, everybody in the SEC, really everybody in college athletics, certainly at the high major level, is doing everything they can to raise NIL money. Of course, they've always raised money for facilities and coaching salaries and other things. I just wonder at some point, even really rich people have a limit, I would think, how much they can give you. And so if you're asking them, okay, we need money for this expansion, of the stadium, or for this renovation of Walton Arena, or we need money to make sure we keep Coach A, B, and C, or we need money to pay off Coach A, B, and C because we're firing them. And we need money for this and that, and we need NIL. I just wonder at some point, where do you reach the breaking point, whether you're an SEC school or Big Ten school or whatever, but I don't know exactly how, where Arkansas ranks in the SEC and NIL. My guess is probably somewhere in the middle because that's kind of where they are in a lot of their sport. Some of the sports they do great, but in football, obviously, we know they didn't do well, although they have had good years. Basketball has had a lot of good years, not doing well. Baseball has been very good. So my guess is Arkansas is not at the top of the SEC, but they're not at the bottom of it either.
And then we also got a football question asking about how winter workouts are going. I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that. Didn't want to fully ignore it just because somebody took the time out of their day to ask the question. But does anybody know how winter workouts are going in football?
I don't have any idea. So much other stuff going on. I assume they're going wonderful and everybody's doing great.
I hope they're indoors and stayed warm, but we've been in hoops land, man. But no, I mean, just to entertain the question a little bit, I'm sure that right now it's a lot of just how it is with basketball and anything. It's a lot of figuring out new guys that are in the portal that you got in from the portal. So hopefully it's going well for them.
And I'm getting the wrap it up signal, but do we want to squeeze in? Get Stump the Bob real quick?
Of course.
Can't miss it.
Last week you correctly answered a question that was worth 3 points, so you got positive on the season. You're 3-3. Still have those 2 side points in your back pocket. You probably want to save those for the end of the season, though. But today's question is about Arkansas's first Final Four under Nolan Richardson in 1990, played in Denver. Your question is, who did Arkansas beat in the Elite Eight to make the Final Four?
Maybe beat Texas.
Ding, 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 ding. Correct.
Oh,
Got
my
it.
goodness. Bob, you were...
Untouchable.
You got it. And that game was actually played in Dallas.
At the old Reunion Arena, yep.
Yeah.
That was basically known as Barnhill South. That's where Arkansas used to dominate the Southwest Conference tournament. And but, yeah, that was kind of a crazy year because that year in the Midwest Regional, Oklahoma was the number 1 seed. They were number 1 overall. Arkansas was the 4th seed. Everybody was anticipating, wow, Arkansas and Oklahoma are going to play in Dallas, and that's going to blow the roof off Reunion Arena because Billy Tubbs got up and down, Nolan Richardson obviously got up and down, and then you had Purdue, I believe, was the 2 seed, and Georgetown was the 3 seed. And then a school I'd never heard of, Xavier, I believe, knocked off Georgetown, and I'm trying to remember who upset Purdue. Well, North Carolina upset Oklahoma, and that was a down year for Carolina. They were a 9 seed actually, and upset Southwest Missouri State, and then they knocked off OU, and then so Arkansas didn't have to go through Oklahoma or Georgetown or Purdue to get to that Final Four. Hey, you only beat who's in front of you. But they just took that North Carolina team to task, and I think they beat them like 90-something to 70-something, just really beat them down. And then, I tell you, Texas upset Purdue, and I think Xavier beat Georgetown. So you had a Sweet 16 of Texas and Xavier and Arkansas and North Carolina. So you had Arkansas was the kingpin as a 4 seed. The other seeds were like 9s, 11s, and 12s or something. It was pretty crazy. But hey, that's the NCAA tournament for you.
Blake, safe to say you did not stump the Bob. He not only answered the multiple choice question, he wrote an essay on this topic. So.
And he also went back through that entire region.
Oh my goodness! I mean, we just got that right there was what we expected in week 1, and slowly but surely, Bob is playing his way out of the NIT and into the NCAA tournament.
Real Cinderella story.
Eye test right now.
So Lindsey Howell for Arkansas was the leading scorer. He had 21 points, and he also had the most rebounds for Arkansas, shared with Oliver Miller, had 9 rebounds. Lee Mayberry had 7 assists.
There we go.
Yeah, I think Lindsey was the MVP of the regional or most outstanding player, whatever, the MOP or the MVP or whatever. But yeah, and Lindsey was from down there in Texas.
Yeah, he was from Dallas. So that was his hometown.
Yeah, so that was a big deal. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but he was a great junior college transfer for Arkansas, and he was a guy about 6'5". He just could do it all. And those kind of players, Nolan Richardson, coming from a JUCO background himself as a player and coach, he obviously liked getting guys like Lee Mabry and Todd Day McDowell's All-Americans, but he really mined the JUCO ranks for a lot of good players too.
It's because there's a lot of good players in the JUCO ranks, I say, as a former JUCO athlete myself. All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for submitting your questions. Thank you for listening. Thank you all for being here. From myself, Anthony Christensen, Blake Sutton behind the cameras, Ethan Westerman to my right, Bob Holt right in front of me. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week on the Basketball Podcast in Mid-America.